Hey guys, I'm Stephanie Anderson, DJ Step1, and I'm the co-owner and an instructor at Sequence 1 Music School in Oakland. I just released a video called Cutthroat, so I'm going to walk you through my project and how I set it up for the live performance. So in this project, I have two tracks. One is a MIDI track with a drum rack containing all the samples for the finger drumming performance. The other is a blank audio track, which is what I use to record the scratch portion of the performance. I set up this audio track to receive the signal from my DJ mixer, which is routed through my audio interface. So in the performance, I'm not sending my laptop's audio into my DJ mixer, I'm sending the output of my DJ mixer into Ableton. Okay, let's move on to the setup of my drum rack. We'll start with the bottom row, which is where I have the percussion elements. So on the bottom row, we have the kick, snare, and hi-hats. So I play the kick and snare with my left hand and the open and closed hi-hats with my right hand. Then in the row above the percussion, I have the next sample, and this is actually the same sample, just duplicated across 3 pads. The first one is at the original pitch, and the next 2 are transposed down for some variety. And it's really easy to do that in the simpler. You can see on this instance of the sample, I've transposed it down 7 semitones, which is a fifth. And this one, I've transposed down 12 semitones, which is an octave. In the row above that, I have the next sample, which is the strings. I also added a reverb to this sample, which you can see if I select the pad, and I'm using the medium room preset. And that's one of the really cool things about drum racks, is that you can just drag and drop an audio effect right onto a pad to manipulate just the sound on that pad. So for example, I could go up to audio effects, go to the simple delay, and just drop this on the pad. And here it is, it appears after the reverb. So that's pretty cool. You can just drag and drop audio effects on a specific pad in the drum rack. So I'll just undo that. Okay, so moving on to the top row, I just have 2 additional elements. The first is the wind sound effect that you hear in the intro and the outro, and then the second is a reverse cymbal that I made. And I use it as a transition between the intro and the first section of the song. There's one last thing I want to point out about my drum rack layout, and it involves a pretty useful technique. In the drum rack, it's possible to add more than one sound to a single pad. In my case, I wanted to add some bass underneath samples 1 and 2, so I added an 808 to those pads. I'll play those samples so you can hear the 808. Now, if you're listening through phone or laptop speakers, you might not hear the low end, but it's definitely there. So I wanted to demo this technique briefly. So I'll show you how to do it with the sample 3 pad here. There's currently only one sample, so I'll go ahead and add the 808. So let me just find the 808. Now all I have to do is hold down Command on a Mac or Control on a PC while dragging and dropping this onto the pad. Now pay attention down there in device view, because as soon as I release the mouse and drop the sample onto the pad, Ableton is going to automatically create an instrument rack, which is basically just a container for bundling instruments and effects. And there it is. Both samples are housed in the instrument rack, and each one is here on its own chain. So we have that original sample and then also the 808 bass that I dropped on top of it. The beauty of chains is that you can apply processing to each chain individually. So on the sample 2 pad, you can see that the 808 chain has no processing specific to that chain. But if I select this chain, you can see that I added an EQ8 to shape the sound a little bit and roll off some of the low end so it doesn't conflict with the 808. And if you're going to layer sounds in a drum rack, you should definitely be careful about frequency conflict and adjust your EQs accordingly. Here's another little tip. In the instrument rack I just created on the sample 3 pad, there's no EQ8 device yet, like there is on samples 1 and 2. Rather than add an EQ8 and adjust the same settings all over again, I can actually just copy and paste the EQ8 from one of those other instrument racks. So I'll go to sample 2, and then I'll select the chain, and then I will select EQ8. So I have to make sure to click the title bar of the device so that it's selected. And then I'll just use the copy shortcut, Command-C on a Mac or Control-C on a PC, to copy this EQ8 with these settings. Now I'll go to the chain in the instrument rack that I just created. Now, before I paste, I need to tell Ableton where to put the device. And I want the EQ8 to be after the simpler. So I'll click this divider line here to highlight it. And you can see it kind of changes color. And then all I have to do is use the paste shortcut, Command-V on a Mac or Control-V on a PC. And there it is. So now let's talk about the processing for the entire drum rack track. I'm using the glue compressor and the saturator, and those audio effects are going to make the sounds in the drum rack more cohesive and help them gel together a little better. So let's take a look at that really quick. Let me scroll over so you can see the glue compressor and the saturator. So in the glue compressor, I chose a medium to slower attack time to allow some of the transients of the drums to go through. I set a fast release time so the compressor would be able to recover before the next drum hits happen. And I applied a moderate amount of gain reduction. And now over to the saturator. The saturator is adding harmonic distortion for some warmth and edge, and that will help unify all the sounds in the drum rack. On this track, I'm using the analog clip mode with a little bit of drive. Lastly, I just want to cover 3 things related to the way I recorded the performance. The first is how I handled looping. I wanted to record the beat that I played on the push and then loop it so I could scratch on top of it. But the loop length I needed was a little irregular. I have a 4-bar intro followed by 2 8-bar song sections, which is 20 bars. On the push, you can do fixed length recording, but 20 bars isn't one of the preset options. So here's how I handled that. In Ableton, I just created an empty clip on the drum rack track. So here it is, and I'll double click it to open clip view. I set the length of the clip here to 20 bars, and then I turned on looping here. Now, as long as this clip is active, then when I hit record on my push, the performance gets recorded into this clip, and after 20 bars, when I'm done with the finger drumming, the clip will automatically loop for another 20 bars so that I can jump over to the turntable and scratch on top of the beat. The next recording tip is about quantization. On the push, you can enable Record Quantize to automatically snap the MIDI notes to a grid as you play them, and you can specify the amount of quantization that you want. All you have to do is hold down the Quantize button, press to enable Record Quantize, and then just turn the rotary encoder to select the note value. In my performance, I used 16th notes. And the last thing I wanted to mention is how to arm multiple tracks for recording. In most cases, you usually just want to record 1 track at a time, but for the Cutthroat video, I needed to record my performance on the push on track 1 and simultaneously record my scratch performance coming from my DJ mixer on track 2. And in Ableton, you can record and enable multiple tracks. All you have to do is hold down Command on a Mac or Control on a PC, and then click the record arm button on the other track. And now both of these tracks are enabled for recording. And there you have it. That's how my project is set up. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.